Coming to you live from the shadow of the big house, it's IT4U. Tips and tricks on ITS tools, products, services, and more with your host, Gene Mackey.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Gene Mackey. Welcome to IT4U. These are interactive webinars brought to you by Information Technology Services. And if you're having any audio or video problems, just let us know in the chat. And if it's not our end, we can offer some tips. And if you're watching the YouTube video recording of this, check the description and you'll see a link to a Google Doc with some resources. If you need an accommodation to participate in our live episodes, just give us a little heads up. Today, we've got Christopher Gardner also with ITS on the Information Quest team, and he's going to talk to us about tiled dashboards in Tableau. And let me bring this up. Without any further ado, turn it over to Chris.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Gardner. I'm from Information Quest. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about building dashboards in Tableau. A lot of times when you're working with Tableau, you get familiar with building the charts and building the graphs and coming up with different ways to visualize data, but it's not always intuitive how to get those dashboards laid out, how to get them to look the way you want to, how to get the headers in the right spot, the legends where you want them, and everything the right size. So I thought I'd do a little bit of a demo on how to build a dashboard in Tableau using Tableau. I want to kind of give you an overview and kind of show you how everything works in Tableau, and then once I've given you the basics, I'm actually going to go through and start building a dashboard. I don't know how far we'll get in building the dashboard, but hopefully I'll give you enough information to get you started and help you along the way to building your own dashboards. So to get started, what I've done is I've already built a dashboard in Tableau. You'll notice up at the top there's a header, there's an icon at the top for information, there's a couple charts with some legends and some filters, and then there's a nice blue footer bar at the bottom. To build in Tableau, what you need to know a little bit about is the Objects menu down in the lower left-hand corner. There are some things in the Object menu that make it easier to do layouts in Tableau. The ones I'm going to be focusing on are the horizontal and the vertical objects. These objects are containers, kind of like divs when you're building in HTML. These objects allow you to align things horizontally, allow you to align things vertically, and resize things horizontally and vertically as well. So when you're building your dashboard, you kind of have to think ahead how you want to lay things out and start putting things into these layouts.
And if you have questions or comments, just use the chat and I'll relay the questions to Chris.
So when you're working in Tableau, what you'll do is you'll start with just a blank dashboard screen, and I'll show you that in just a moment. Then what you will start doing is you'll start adding these objects, horizontal and vertical. These horizontal ones will hold things divided horizontally, as you can see in this upper box. It allows you to resize things left to right. Vertical containers hold things up and down, and they allow you to resize things vertically. This over here is just an image. I put it in there because I wanted something to be in there. When you look at this dashboard that I built originally, you can actually see the boxes and the verticals and the horizontals that I used to put this together. I've outlined them in dashed lines so you can see them. Now, it's kind of hard to see with all the stuff in here, so I took another step beyond that, and I actually rebuilt the dashboard with nothing in it except those outlines. So what you'll see is you'll see a series of containers within this dashboard, and these are my horizontal, my vertical dividing containers that contain the different parts to build my dashboard. Around the outside edge, you'll see a blue one. This is a vertical container and holds everything inside it in a vertical layout. Up here is your header bar. This is actually a horizontal container, and I'll start showing you how these things come together to build your dashboard. In my Tableau workbook as well, I have three charts. I have my sales and profit, my profit margin, and then I have this information icon. If you want some more information on how I built that, if I have a little time, I'll go over that. But what it is just simply an icon that has a little bit of a tooltip on it to kind of illustrate some information about your chart. So let's get started on building a dashboard layout. So the first thing you'll want to do is create a new dashboard. By default, when you start a new dashboard in Tableau, it'll default to the desktop browser size up here in the top. There are a multitude of different options for sizes of dashboards, depending on what you're building it for, be it a laptop screen, a desktop screen, maybe you're building it to be printed out on paper, maybe you've got it on an iPhone or an iPad. All those sizes are available to you over here on the side. I'm going to just continue working with the 1000 by 800, and what I'm going to do is just give myself a little bit more room. I'm going to kick up my height just a little bit, so it's 1000 by 1000. And then this is your space over here to work with when you're building your dashboard. Now, one of the things with Tableau is that it likes to be very helpful. And as we know with most software, when it tries to be helpful, it's often not. So let's just get started, and I'll kind of show you how things work. So the first thing I want to do is give this dashboard a title. So if you go to the dashboard menu, there's an option that says Show Title. And that's exactly what it'll do. It'll take whatever your tab is named and put it up at the top. If I go to the Layout tab, I can actually see how this thing is laid out down here at the bottom. It's made a tiled container with a vertical container with a title in it and then some space down below it. Tiled containers are kind of like horizontal and vertical containers without all the additional functionality, without the ability to resize easily vertically or horizontally. They just make things really difficult to work with. Typically, what I like to do is get rid of the tiled ones to start with. When you're looking at your hierarchy in the dashboard layout, you can actually right-click on any of these components and remove them. There are two options to remove them. The remove container will just get rid of the container, but it'll leave everything else that's inside it there. The remove from dashboard will remove container and everything inside it as well. So I'm going to just get rid of the tiled, and I'm going to get rid of this other tiled here. That leaves us with a vertical container. This whole dashboard is one giant vertical container, and within it, there's my title. That's all I have in this dashboard right now. When I look back at my original layout, back here, we can see it's divided vertically. We've got a vertical section for the header, we've got a section for this chart, we've got a section for the bottom chart, and then we've got a blue line at the bottom. So the overall container needs to be vertically segmented, and that's what we have. We have a vertical container holding the different segments of the dashboard. Let's start by putting in our first chart. If we look at the Superstore data chart, the one I built just right here, we have a chart here, and we have some filters and a legend over here. So this is the shape of the object we're going to put in here. And if you look carefully, you can see this is horizontally laid out. There's a section here on the left, and there's a section here on the right. So what I'm going to do is go back to my dashboard. I'm going to go to the dashboard tab, and I'm going to drag a horizontal in here. And where you see the dark gray line is where it's going to drop that horizontal container. So I'm going to drop it right here. And you can see where it is. It's highlighted right here in this dark blue line. If I go to the layout, I can click on the different things, and it will show me where that object is. So now I have a horizontal container in here, and I want to put my chart in. This is where Tableau's helpfulness comes into play and becomes kind of a pain. So I'm going to drag my sales and profit into this horizontal container, and we'll see what happens. So I've got my sales and profit in this container, and you notice my filters and stuff showed up, but they're kind of in the background. I can't see them. What happened? If I go to my layout, we can see how Tableau is super helpful and just put things nested in this strange tiled horizontal thing. I don't even know why it did that. This is, generally speaking, not what I need. I need to have this in here, and I need to have all those filters and legends off to the side of it. One trick that I've learned right off the bat is I'm going to actually undo this step. I'm going to go to my dashboard, and I'm going to actually just put a blank in this horizontal container. Take a look at that. So now I have vertical, I've got the header, I've got a horizontal section, and within that horizontal section, I've got a blank object. I want to make this horizontal section just a little bigger. Now I'm going to actually drag my sales and profit in again. And when I drag it in this time, since I'm putting it in a horizontal container, you'll notice that the gray bar is to the left. Because it's divided up horizontally, I can put it on the left or the right. I'm going to put it on the left, drop it there. Again, it puts everything in off in the side over here, but now I have some space off to the right-hand side of my chart where I can move these filters and the legend in. So I'm going to go back to my layout real quick and take a look. Again, it put in this tiled, horizontal, vertical, and all that. I don't need all this extra stuff. What I can do is I can actually grab the vertical container that holds all of those menus, all those filters, all those legends. I can click on it so it's highlighted, grab it using this little bar at the top, and I can actually put it, if I can grab a hold of it, right between this blank space and the chart. And when I let go, now I have everything within this horizontal bar. Are there any questions real quick before I continue on? I'm going to move kind of fast because we don't have a lot of time, but I want to give you a chance to ask questions as well. Okay, so we've got this horizontal container. We have our chart on the left. We've got a vertical container containing our multiple filters and our legend. And we still have that blank over there. I'm actually going to get rid of that blank now that we've got everything in the container. And it's going to space things out. Tableau put in this nice, helpful set of containers over here on the side that we didn't end up using. So I'm actually going to right-click and remove from dashboard. So it's going to remove the container and everything inside it. And it will warn me about this. And I'm going to get rid of it. And now we have just the general layout. Now, one thing you'll notice is everything is kind of scrunched down, and that's because I resized this this horizontal container in here. When I resized it, what it did was it fixed the height of that container. It's never going to get bigger or smaller than that dynamically. What I can do is uncheck fixed height, and it'll make it as big as it possibly can to fit that area. Obviously, this may not be what I want, so what I may want to do just for now is fix the height anyways, and set it to, I'm just right-clicking on it, right-clicking on it, editing the height. I'm just going to set it to something arbitrary, like 200 pixels tall. So we've got our first chart in there. We'll come back to that and resize it and make it look the way we want to. Let's add our second chart real quick. Again, we're going to do the same steps. We still have the overall vertical container, and I'll show you that. There's the vertical container. We have one section here, one section here. We're going to add another section here. Just like with the first chart, we're going to put it in a horizontal container. So I'm going to drag the horizontal up and drop it. Just like with the first one, we're going to put a blank in there to keep it open. Whenever you drop a blank into a container, it's going to shrink it down a little bit. I always make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to work with. So now we can see our horizontal container right here is waiting for our second chart. I'm going to go over, I'm going to grab my second chart, and I accidentally double-clicked. Let me just try that again. There we go. I'm going to drop it on the left-hand side. And Tableau, once again, is trying to be helpful, and it has put my legend somewhere else. Who knows where it put it? It's put it right up here. So in this one, the only thing I really have is just the legend. I don't have any filters or anything to go with profit margins. So I'm just going to actually drag the legend down right next to profit margin. Let's take a look at the layout so we can see how everything looks. We've got the overall vertical containing everything. We've got the title. We've got a horizontal container for this chart, and we've got a horizontal container for this chart. In this horizontal container, we have the actual chart itself, the legend, and we have that blank one in there still. So I'm going to get rid of the blank and kind of stretch it out. I can make this a little bit bigger if I need to. And this is right here is where the power of putting it into a horizontal or vertical container comes into play. When it's in a horizontal container, you can resize things horizontally. When it's in a vertical container, and it switched it to a tiled, I'll undo that real quick. When it's in a vertical container, you can resize it vertically. So you can resize how tall this is, and you can resize how tall the second horizontal is. Last but not least, if we look at our original dashboard, we have way down at the bottom a footer. So I'm just going to simply toss in a small section at the bottom. I'm going to put in one more horizontal at the bottom, and that will be my footer. And now we have some cleanup to do. It's got all the parts it needs to build this dashboard, but it's lacking a lot of the cleanup, the style, the design. So I'm going to show you how to do some of those things to clean up your dashboard and make it look a lot nicer. So the first step that we're going to do is take a look at the title. The title bar right now is just kind of sitting by itself. It's up there all on its own. If we look at the original dashboard, The title bar is blue, the text is orange, and there's a subtext, and then there's this information icon. I want to have all that stuff in there on my new one. So what I'm going to do is, looking at this, I can see right off the bat that this is a horizontal thing. It's divided into 3 sections horizontally. So I'm going to put a horizontal container at the top of my new dashboard, and I'm going to color it blue. So let's do that real quick. I'm going to put in a horizontal container at the very top. And sometimes it's easier just to drop it between things. I think this one will actually do it right. Yep. So now I have this vertical container at the very top. I have this brand new horizontal I put in. I'm actually got it highlighted. Over here on the left-hand side, I can actually set my background. In here, I actually have some of the university colors already stored. In the document section at the end of this IT4U, there's actually going to be a help document on how to include the university colors into your dashboards and into your workbooks. This one in particular is the university blue. So I'm just going to switch it to that university blue, and you can see it changed the entire horizontal container to that blue. Just like with any other container, I'm going to put a blank in there to hold it open. And I don't know if it did it. It did, and I actually got an extra one in there accidentally. This mouse is very sensitive. There we go. So I've got this blue container. There's a blank inside it. I'm going to grab the title and drag it just like I did one of my workbooks. I'm going to put it on the left-hand side. Now it looks like it disappeared. It didn't actually disappear. The text is gray on dark blue. If you double-click on the title, you can actually change anything about the text you want. So I'm going to actually just change the color to a yellow, and then I'm going to press the Enter key. I'm going to kick my font down just a little bit, and in white I'm going to type test dashboard. Can't see it, but it's there. And you'll see that this doesn't really fit. It's not working in there. I can't see it. What I can do is I can actually make the size of this horizontal container a little bigger. If you right click on any container that's in the, we're sitting inside the vertical, so I can actually set its height. I'm going to set its height. Right now it's 51 pixels. I'm just going to guess 75 pixels. And there we have our header up at the top. On our original dashboard, we also have an information icon. That's actually just a workbook. So I can go over here, grab the information icon, and I'm going to drop it. And I'll drop it on the right-hand side. Now, obviously, this doesn't look the way we want it to, and the reason is it has a title. I don't need the title. And also, it doesn't seem to fit. Whenever you put anything on a dashboard, you can actually go to the pull-down and actually set it to fit, either the width, the height, or the entire view. In this case, I want that entire eye to fit in there, so I'm going to say entire view. Now we see that the eye icon has appeared at the top, which is exactly what we wanted, but it's got those white bars on the top and bottom. How do I get rid of those? Well, the reason it has those white bars is because our header itself is 75 pixels tall. This object, this eye icon itself, is only 60 pixels wide. I can go in here, since it's inside a horizontal container, and fix the width, edit the width, and set it to 75 pixels. When I make it exactly the same width as it is tall, it fits perfectly in that spot and it fills up the top. And that's our header. Our header is built. Before I keep going, are there any other questions? Anything coming up? Okay. Next, I want to stop real quick and kind of take a look at the outlines. Kind of tough to see it here, but what you'll notice is up here's the pink. This is our horizontal container for our title. Down here in the yellow are the charts. These are the horizontal containers for our charts. You'll notice that the charts are inside of another vertical container in here. And it may not be intuitive as to why I would do that, but I want to show you a little trick in Tableau. I'm going to sneak another vertical right between the header and my 2 charts. So I've got that up there, and once again, I'm going to drag a blank to keep it open, and I'm going to resize it. The blank to keep it open is one of my favorite tricks. It just keeps it open and spaced out so you can get in and work with it. So I've got this vertical container with a blank object in it. I'm going to grab my horizontal container for my sales, and I'm going to put that at the top. And then I'm going to go down here and grab my horizontal container for my profit margin, drag that right between the top chart and the blank. And then we've got this great big vertical thing. I'm going to get rid of this blank that I had in there originally. And on this thing right here, the new vertical I just put in, I'm going to get rid of the height restrictions so that everything fits. And on these horizontals within it, I'm actually going to get rid of their fixed height as well. So now we've got this vertical container in here. Let's take a look at how things are laying out. This horizontal contains my header. This vertical contains both of my charts. And this last vertical down here at the bottom has another vertical inside it. I don't know when that happened. Oops, Control Z happened there. I've got a vertical inside a horizontal. I'm not sure what's going on there. There it goes. This last container down here, I'm going to color it blue just so we can see it a little better. So right now we obviously have a problem that our bottom container is way too big. I'm just going to resize it real quick to 25 pixels. There we go. And what you'll notice is these charts are actually resized to fill the space. There's no fixed height on them anymore, so they're just going to try to fill the space the best they can. Obviously, it still doesn't quite look right, but here's the trick that I wanted to show you. When you have any container, vertical or horizontal, if you right-click on it, there's an option called Distribute Evenly. What Distribute Evenly does is it takes anything within that container and distributes it vertically or horizontally so that all the objects inside get the same amount of space. When I set it to distribute evenly, it gives the same amount of space to my top chart as it does to my bottom chart. So those two horizontals in there are exactly the same height. If I was to add another set of charts in here in another horizontal container, it would make it fit exactly the same, so all three had the same height. Or if I had four, all four would have the same height. It is doing that to make sure everything gets the same size, and it's a really helpful tool to make sure your charts are exactly the same height and get as much space as possible out of your dashboard. So now we have everything kind of distributed evenly across the page. There's just a little bit more cleanup to do, and I want to at least show you some of these tricks before we get down to the question part of the IT4U. Yes, Gene, we have a question?
Yes, Tableau tends to put filters on the right side. Most websites have it on the left. What is your recommendation? How can we move filters to the left side?
That's actually really easy if that's something you want to do. Let me show you how to do that real quick. Right here's our vertical container, and in here we've got this horizontal container with our filters, and our legend, and we've got the actual chart. If you wanted it on the left-hand side, you could actually grab the container that has all that stuff, drag it, and put it on the left-hand side, and it would actually just switch it around. Now, from a usability standpoint, what we've generally learned is when you're reading a dashboard or a newspaper or a magazine article or anything like that, your eyes tend to start in the upper left and work to the lower right. The question is, do you want them to see the filters first or do you want them to see the chart first? That's up to you. In this case, it's just a demo. You can do it either way you want to. I chose to put it on the right for now, but that's, again, up to you and how you want to design it. I would test it out with your users and see what works best for them. Are they more interested in being able to filter down your data, or are they more interested in actually seeing the results? So let me show you a few other tricks that we've learned as far as dealing with dashboards. First of all, you'll notice that this particular filter is really long. I have to scroll, and that's kind of annoying. I'd rather not have people scroll. I'd rather have them just be able to use it, especially if they're kind of looking at this maybe on an iPad or something. That might be really difficult to use. One of the tricks you can do is actually change the way your filters work on a dashboard. If you go and click on any of the filters and click on the pull down, you can change how it appears on the dashboard. Here are a list of all the possibilities. Let me show you each one of these so you can kind of see what they do. A single value list will allow them to choose one at a time, but you can only choose one. This is very similar to the single value dropdown, which is a drop-down, but you can only choose one at a time. There's also a single value slider, and what this is kind of a slider bar. This is a little bit more popular with dates and stuff, but it still works for this. You can actually kind of slide through. exactly the most intuitive interface, but it allows you to flip through the states this way. One thing I will note, I'm going to show the single value dropdown. When you do any single value or anything like that, there's an all option always at the top. If you don't want that all, if you don't want all to be an option for your users, you can click on this pull down, customize it, and uncheck show all. The other options for the different types of filters are multiple values, which is very similar to the single value list, only you get checkboxes and you can have multiple items selected. So if you want to see Arizona and Arkansas together, you can do so. You just uncheck all and you turn on Arizona and Arkansas. One thing that I will note when working with a multiple choice filter is as you're doing this, you'll notice my chart is changing. If you have large data sets and you have lots of filters and stuff interacting with those data sets, it can really bog it down sometimes. And so changing one filter can make it sit there and think for 30 to 40 seconds. That's not always the best user interface. There is an option within your filter to customize and show apply button. What this allows you to do is check and move a whole bunch of different things and then click apply, and then it'll think about it. Gene, I think we have another question.
Is there any way to optimize dashboards for iPad view other than manually resizing? What is the default size you recommend?
I thought there was an iPad view, but let me look real quick here. What I would do to make sure that you do choose the correct size for an iPad is actually go online and take a look and see what the iPad resolution is. It's kind of a tricky question because there are different size iPads.
Sure.
So there is no one right answer. I would generally figure out what the typical iPad, what is it, 4? I don't even know what version we're on now.
4, I think.
But find a typical iPad version and look up what the screen resolution is. Generally speaking, you're going to be designing for a somewhat portrait landscape. If you can't find the exact resolution, an iPad is typically a shrunk down size piece of paper, I would say, a vertical piece of paper. So you may be able to do that with a letter portrait and make it fit that. That might work for you. But I would generally go online, figure out what the resolution is on an iPad, at least the ones you're designing for, and design for that. And you can manually, I guess, again, input the pixel height and width in here. Okay, back to the filters. For this particular one, I'm going to actually set it to a multiple value dropdown. Oh, one last thing, there's a wildcard match. That's when you can actually just start typing stuff, MICH, and it'll actually filter down to things that start with MICH. For this particular chart, I'm going to do a multiple values dropdown list and set it like this, and I'm going to leave the apply value on here, like that. Here's our legend. For this one down here, obviously the legend's a little bit big, but since we have this in a horizontal container, we can actually shrink it down. And as I'm clicking and dragging the side of this legend, you'll actually notice there's a little black triangle right up here at the top. That black triangle is showing me where the divider is on the set of charts above, so I can actually line it up perfectly and make it match. And now we're actually doing pretty well. We're pretty close to what we had before. Another trick that you can do with your filters, and what we like to do when we're working with provost dashboards or regents dashboards, is we actually nest another vertical container in here. So I'm going to put another vertical container in here, and I'm going to show you why. I'm going to go in this vertical container, and I'm going to set its background as a blue, just so you can see it. I'm going to put a border on it too, a nice little black border. So I've got this vertical container in here in my filters. It's kind of pushing everything out of the way right now, but let me show you why I'm putting it in there. I'm going to drag a blank in here to keep it open, just like I always do, assuming I drop that in the right spot because my mouse is super sensitive. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting these filters in here. I'm going to put them at the bottom right now. State, province, NIST, there we go. And I'm going to leave that out there. And then what I'm going to do is go over to my dashboard, and I'm just going to add some text to the, this mouse is very sensitive. There we go. And I'm going to type interactive filters. By default, Tableau will make things gray. So always double check and make sure your font color is black or whatever color you want them to be instead of the gray. Sometimes the gray can be really hard to see. I'm actually going to kick the font up to 11. I'm going to make it bold and put that right up there. Interactive filters. And so now I've got this nice blue background for my filters. I still have this blank up here that I use to keep it open. I'm going to get rid of that. And now our filters actually have a background on them, so your attention can be drawn to them. You know those are filters to interact with. Really quickly, I'm just going to make the title of this one bold, and I'm going to show you this real quick. That's black, okay? One of the things you can also do with any type of filter on your dashboard is if that filter can also be used on your other charts, you can tell it to do so. So the state or province, if I want it to apply to profit margin as well, I can pull this pull down, go over Apply to Worksheets, select the worksheet, and I'm going to have it apply to profit margin as well. Now, when I uncheck some of the states, profit margin will also update at the same time. So this filter is now applying to both charts. Likewise with my manager, if I'm only interested in seeing certain managers, I can apply this to, oh, I've already got that one set to profit margin. So as I select Chris as the manager, I can see how Chris is doing versus Aaron. And this filter applies now to both sheets. The other thing you can do on any of these is on any of the charts, go into the pull down and click the Use as Filter. What this does is it basically turns this chart into a filter for the other charts. So if I'm only interested in what happened in this month right here, something happened, I want to know what that is, I'm going to click on that particular point. And what it'll do is it should filter the other chart. At this point doesn't have any data. And it'll filter the other chart and actually show it what it was, what the value is. It's hard to see because there's only one point. But if I hold down Control and click multiple bars, I can start to see the profit margins for those particular days that I'm interested. Maybe I'm interested in the days where the profit's really low. And you can see that that filter is actually on this chart is interacting with this chart as well. And you can do it vice versa as well. I'm going to reset the filters on these, and I'm going to turn that off. Don't use as a filter. There's actually just a little icon right here that you can do that with. Now there's a couple other little cleanup things that I wanted to show you before we get into questions. One thing you'll notice is my interactive filters right here. There's a space above my sales and profit, but there's no space above my interactive filters. And why is that? If I go to my layout, I'm going to take a look at the way things are laid out here. So I've got this overall vertical container, I've got my horizontal header, and then I've got this vertical container containing my stuff. The sales and profit has the padding, but this bar over here, this vertical container doesn't have that padding. When you click on anything over here, up at the top above it, you can see the padding for that particular object. When you pull it down, by default, all sides are set to equal and there's no padding at all on this. I'm just going to kick the padding up to 4. Tableau used to, by default, set the padding to everything as 4. So when I do that, now you can see I've got that nice little space up the top. The other complication with that is, though, that everything starts getting these padding, and sometimes you get too much. So if you look at the interactive filters and you look at my sales and profit, it's actually padded over even further than my header, which is not what I want. I want it to go all the way to the edge. So I can click on sales and profit. I can uncheck all sides equal, and I can just get rid of that left side. I don't want that to be there. And you can see it shifted my sales and profit over so that it lines up perfectly with the header. Alignment is one of the keys to user experience. It makes the things easier to use. It makes it easier for people to navigate. It makes it easier to read. Alignment's very key in graphic design. So pay attention to that when you're working with your dashboard and watch your padding. Likewise with my vertical container on the right-hand side, I don't want any padding on the right, so I'm going to turn off the all sides equal. I'm going to set all sides equal off, and I'm going to set that to 0. And now you see that my header lines up with the right-hand bar. It just makes it look a lot nicer and makes it a lot easier to read. There are a few other things I wanted to show you real quick. Do we still have time? A little bit of time? Great. So one of the questions I get pretty often is, how do I do this nifty little icon up here? I don't know if everybody can see that, but it's basically just an eye. And when you hover over it, it tells you a little bit about the dashboard. It gives you maybe the data source or maybe some caveats or some things you want the user to focus on. How do we make that worksheet? It's actually really simple. I'm going to show it to you. It actually doesn't need any data set at all. All you have to do is drag in measure value or measure names, which is available at the bottom of your dimensions. Drag it into the columns, drag it into the rows, and set your marks to shape. So I'm going to build it from scratch to show you. I'm going to put measure names up at the columns, measure names up into the rows. But right now, it's set to automatic. We don't want it to be automatic. We want it to be a shape. And then you set the shape. You'll need to add a custom shape to make this work. And I see we have a question. I'll get right to it. We've actually loaded some custom shapes for ours. And one of them is the eye icon. So there's the eye icon. Kind of hard to see where it's at, but you can right click on these headers, turn them off. And now it's in there, but it's really small. I'm actually going to make it a little bigger so you can see it. Right now you see there's a bunch of space around the eye. What you can do is go to the size and just make it the first tick. That'll fill up the space. You'll also notice that we have these bars at the top or bottom. It took me a long time to figure out where those bars came from. If you right click on it and say format, and you click on the bars here, I believe, it's actually a horizontal row reference line. It might actually be here. Row divider right here. You turn that off, it'll go away. And then I just simply hide the title. Now to get the actual text to pop up, you click on the tooltip and you can type whatever you want. And then you hover over it, that's what it'll show. And then you simply just add this chart to your dashboard. There's a question, Jean?
I have survey questions graph that I'd like to display in a dashboard. Is there a way to auto-fit all sheets I display? For example, drop 10 sheets in and let dashboard auto-format. Is that possible?
So you want to fit multiple sheets into your dashboard and have them all be the same size? Is that the question? Am I getting that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so that goes back to if you had a really tall dashboard. If you have 10 sheets you want to show in one dashboard, you're going to need a very tall dashboard. What you would do is you would put it into a vertical container just like we did here, and I'm going to show you the container outlines. This pink line right here is a vertical container, and this contains one set of charts, or two set of charts, the two yellow lines here. And then what I did on that particular vertical container to make sure that they all get the same height, let me find it real quick. This vertical container right here is I right-clicked, and if you distribute evenly, that will make everything within that vertical container the same height. Am I answering that question the way they need it?
Kathy?
If there are any questions after this, of course, you can feel free to reach out to the Information Quest team. We're happy to help you out with this as well.
So like 2 minutes.
Okay, there's a couple other little tips and tricks that I wanted to show you before we end today and open up for more questions. The first of which is whenever you're working with Tableau, if you're going to be publishing that particular dashboard or workbook or chart to the web, you're going to want to remember that a lot of the web browsers don't have the default fonts that are in Tableau. When you open up a brand new Tableau dashboard, by default, everything is set to Tableau font. A person sitting somewhere using IE is not going to have that Tableau font if they're not familiar with Tableau. What you may want to do before you do anything in any of your dashboards is go up to the format, go up to your workbook, and this will usually be set to Tableau. I generally go in and switch it to Arial. Arial is generally a font that most browsers can render, and I know that however I design it in my dashboard on my desktop will be generally how it appears on the web as well. So that's one trick. The one thing I will mention is don't set the color here. If you set this to black, and you have labels on your charts, all your labels will be black. Even if it's sitting on a black bar or a dark blue bar or a dark red bar, they will always be black. So don't set the default color, just set the default font. There's another question?
Can you make a filter title display to the left of the drop-down instead of on top?
I have tried doing this in many different ways, and it's never quite worked out well for me. I've almost always had to put it on the top. The one way to do it is to shrink it down and to make it wider. Sometimes it works. A lot of times what happens is my title gets cut off. One thing you can do is this state or province filter applies to this particular chart. Since it applies to this chart, you can double click on the title and press space a couple times, and you can insert the state or province field on the end of the title. Right now we have it set to all. If I deselect everything and say Maine only, apply, now my chart says sales and profit for Maine. You can make dynamic titles for your charts. You can also, to a degree, apply it to the dashboard title as well. If you select multiple, gotta be a little careful with this. It will try to put them all in. And pretty quickly you run out of space. 1 minute warning. All right. One last thing that I do on a lot of my charts is you'll notice my headers are this lovely brown. This is actually one of the university colors as well. If you right click on the title and say format title, you can actually set the shading right up here. That's what I've done for these titles to make them look a little bit nicer. And it helps you see the alignment as well. Be careful whenever you're building your charts to make sure that your headers and your axis labels and all that are black so they're easy to read. By default, they will turn to a dark gray. So making them black, make them stand out. Another tip that I would recommend is on all your charts, put a black border on your bars. That makes them easier to read. And that's pretty much it. There's lots of other little tips and tricks, but I just wanted to give you some design ideas and some helpful hints on getting your dashboard layout done. I will post this particular workbook in the links in the IT4U, so you can download this workbook and play around with it a little bit and see how I built it. Are there any other questions? Anything else?
Gotta go.
So. All right, I think I'm done. I'm going to pass this back to Jean real quick.
Thank you, Chris. And Adam's going to put the polls. Oh, thank you very much. Thank you, Christopher. Lots of good information there. We put a link to the polls in there and would really appreciate some feedback. Chris was referring to a Google Doc, and when I send out the recording in the next day or so, you'll get the link to the Google Doc. And that's really about it. Give you another minute to